Oh, hello, good afternoon, or good morning still. It's so nice to have you all here. My name's Dawn Frank. I've interacted with a lot of you. I do the event coordination here for Excellence in Leadership. Started about 3 years ago. Walter Scott reeled me in, and I have just enjoyed working with so many of you. It makes my heart happy. I have a couple of announcements to make before we get the program started. You will see that we have been EIL for 25 years. So we are thrilled. Yeah. We are so thrilled to be able to have these events twice a year. 25 years means 50 speakers. Thank you, Shane, for being our speaker today. It means we've had almost 16,000 attendees here at these events. Many of you in this room have been there multiple times with us, so we appreciate you so much. As a thank you, you all should have one of these in front of your napkins, in front of your plates. These are our thank you gift to you. It's a sandstone coaster. We chose to put the Bible verse, these are Jesus' words from Matthew 20:26 that say, if you want to be great, you must be the servant of all others. And we at EIL strive to be a servant to all of you guys in this room by putting these events together. Something else that you'll find in with your coasters is this little piece of paper. We're asking that when you take a coaster, if you would please give us your name and your email as well. This is for gift number 2, and that is our president, Jenny Catron, has said that she would be doing a quarterly email. So we'd like your email address so that we can send out a quarterly newsletter with some very helpful leadership principles. One of the reasons we do this is about 90% of you here are registered for these events by one person within your company. So we have that one person's email, but we don't have everybody else's that's in the crowd. So if you would please give us that, we would appreciate it. The other thing, before I move on to announcement number 2, is we have a huge thank you to Doug and to, you guys want to stand up? Doug and Renee Dovey. They're from Strategies up in Appleton. We went to them as a board and said, we want to do a thank you gift for our 25th year. You guys, they do this for companies. They figure out promotional materials that really align in the mission for what that company is trying to achieve. Not only did they help us with the creative design of this and the detail, but they also kept us on our timeline. So we're very thankful to you. The second announcement that I have is you guys are so used to seeing in the middle of our table a bouquet of flowers or a plant. Well, this year, we are very happy and proud to say that there is a book that's going to be given away at the end of the program. And that book was written by Jenny. So when we say she can do the newsletter, we know she can because she's a published author and has done a couple of books now. This is her second book. This book actually has been on the USA Today bestsellers list. So, Jenny, we're so proud of you. Yeah. We're so proud of her. We thank you for using your God-gifted talents with those of us on the board as well as those that are in this room. You'll see that the book, if you're not lucky enough to win the book at the end of this today, they are available. There's a QR code up here, or you can go out to culturemattersbook.com. You'll get a signed copy if you do it that way. That is all I have for now. Frankie is going to come up and lead us in the national anthem, and then we will carry on with the program.
say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Frankie, thank you so much. Always making a priority to be here with us and share her talents and gifts. It is great to be with you all. Thanks for being here on a Tuesday afternoon. This is one of my favorite events that I get to be a part of, and it's always fun to see familiar faces and reconnect. And as Dawn said, 25 years of being able to host events like this, and we have just some remarkable founders who helped make that possible, and so incredibly grateful for them. Before we launch into the program today, let me pray for us, and then we'll continue. God, we are grateful for the privilege of gathering, for the opportunity to learn and grow, to apply our Christian values and principles to our work, and just to connect with one another. And so, God, I thank you for everyone in this room, for the time they took out of their regular schedule to just pause. And God, we pray today that you would just meet us, that we would hear you. God, as Shane shares, would the right thing land with us, the thing we need to take away, the thing we need to learn, the way we can grow, maybe just a way to reflect. Would you help us see you in our conversations today? In Jesus' name, amen. All right, friends, well, my name is Jenny Catron, and I am an author, as you saw, speaker, and I lead an organization called the Foresight Group, where we focus on leadership coaching and organizational culture. And I have the privilege of serving as the president of Excellence and Leadership. Now, we have a remarkable board of directors that lead EIL, and then the amazing Dawn Frank, who helps pull it all together, kind of keep us wrangled. So we have an amazing group of people that work together to really focus on our mission, which is to promote the powerful potential of Christian values and ethics for leaders in the business world today. And I know that many of you, part of why you make this a priority is that you share that same mission or share those same values. And so we are super glad that you are with us today. If you would, I encourage you to keep your phones out, because I bet there's some pictures you're going to want to take, and you're going to want to highlight, take some notes on them, some things today. Do make sure they're on silent if possible. And but if you would, there is a survey. There's a survey on your tables that we would love for you to fill out. You can also scan the QR code on the table display. If you would just take a minute before you leave today to fill out that survey for us. It's a great way for us to get good feedback about potential speakers. Many of our speakers are selected based on your recommendations. Also just helps us know how to create an experience, an event that is helping connect you. So if you'll take a minute to do that. Also, those table displays also highlight our speaker for October. Stephanie Hauser, the WIAA Executive Director, will be our speaker in October, on October 14th. So make sure that's on your calendar. That's going to be a phenomenal event as well. All right, well, I want to take a minute and just thank a lot of our, and not just, I want to thank our sponsors because, again, we're a nonprofit organization. We have some amazing sponsors and partners that come alongside us to make this happen every time. And so we have 7 in-kind sponsors, in-kind and media sponsors. These companies partner with us through their actions and are oftentimes a bit under-recognized because they're so behind the scenes, are supporting us in a number of ways. They really become our teammates, and we're so incredibly grateful for them. The Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce, especially Mark Halfin, for helping us with registration. They handle so much of our registration process. The Family Radio for multiple discounted advertisements for each event. The Oshkosh Herald, Neenah News, and the USA Today Network of Wisconsin for reduced price advertising, and King & Associates for endless hours marketing, content writing, and project management, again, making our organization possible. So would you thank our in-kind and media sponsors? We have 4 supporting sponsors, C12, Miravidia Living, the Foresight Group, and Catalyst Construction. And we have 5 major sponsors, Aegis Financial, Independence Financial, Morton Pharmacy, Titan Property Management, and an anonymous sponsor. Would you thank all of them? And then finally, we have 3 premier sponsors, Festival Foods, Home Instead, and Ascension. And then finally, we want to thank all of our table sponsors. There are 39 of you who have tables, brought coworkers and friends, and so let's say a big thank you to all of you. And of course, if you're interested in sponsoring, we would welcome you. I'm happy to chat with you afterwards if sponsoring EIL is something you're interested in. And then we would not be here if it weren't for our friends here at the Oshkosh Convention Center. We particularly want to thank Christy Markhart, the Director of Catering, and all of her staff, or her wonderful staff, for serving us today. Will you thank all of them? And finally, one of the things I love about this event is that we have a number of students who come every time. And I love when young leaders are committed to their own growth and development. They're kind of getting an edge on us, I think, like starting out young and saying, hey, I want to keep learning, growing, understanding what great leadership looks like. So we have students and faculty from Lourdes Academy, St. Mary's Catholic, Valley Christian School, and the UW Oshkosh. So let's give them a hand for joining us today. Well, friends, I am incredibly excited about our speaker today. Every time we do this event, we get to hear from some truly phenomenal leaders. And we are fortunate right here in the Fox Valley to have some remarkable local leaders, just leaders of great character, heart, intention. And Shane Carter is no exception. He's been a leader for more than 2 decades, has served in roles from ICU nurse to his current role as president of Ascension Medical in Oshkosh. He's a results-driven leader committed to ensuring high clinical quality and exceptional patient experience, as well as providing safe, competent care to the communities served. He's focused on creating a culture and environment where associates love coming to work. Shane lives in Amro with his wife Erin and their 4 children. He's an avid outdoorsman who chooses hunting, camping, golfing, boating, and coaching in his free time. God, family, and country are the life pillars that he lives his life by. So would you please join me in welcoming Shane Carter.
Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate it. I don't know who wrote that. All true. Frankie, where are you, Frankie? I saw her over here earlier. That was absolutely amazing national anthem. Being a former athlete, that's got me all jacked, ready to go for today. So let's go ahead and get started. Well, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch and the fellowship with such a great community of leaders and organizations here today. It's a pretty incredible makeup. First, I'm going to start with disclosures. Often giving speeches, you need a disclosure. I have none, right? I haven't written a book. I have no legal team. I'm just Shane. But to be clear, everything that I share today is my story. It's not really representative of the ministry that I serve at Ascension. And the individual names I'm going to share with you today and talk about in some of my storytelling, I've asked for permission, so they're well aware of their names being mentioned today. But before we get started, before we get into that, I want to play a little activity. It's going to take some math, it's going to take some geography, and it's going to take some knowledge of the animal kingdom. So get ready, make you all think. Post-lunch speeches never go well. Everybody's glucose is now spiked. You're going to get tired. So let's get started here. All right, ready? Think of a number between 2 and 10. It can be 2 and it can be 10, but a number between 2 and 10. Got it? Multiply that number by 9. If you know where I'm going, just keep your mouth shut and play along. All right? All right, multiply that number by 9. Now you have that number. Add the two numbers of your total together. Simple, grade school math, you got it. Now take 5 away from that number. Should be simple, got it. Now equate that number to a letter in the alphabet. As example 1 represents A, 2, B, so on and so forth. Got your letter? Somebody nod for me so I see you got it. Yep, nodding, all right, good. Now think of a country in Europe that starts with that letter. If you did the math right, this should be an easy one. All right, now think of an animal. Not a bird, not a fish, but think of an animal that begins with the letter, their second letter of your country. Everybody following instructions? Got it? All right, now think of a color of that animal. Oh, we are... How many people got gray elephant from Denmark? Come on, admit it. It's either that or we need to go back to math class. All right? All right. All right, all right, all right. My speech is over. I've amazed you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Well, now that you're all amazed by that, let me bore you with a speech about leadership, okay? But all kidding aside, I'm absolutely honored to be here with all of you today. I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about my journey and things that I've learned along the way in reaching others, the power of connection and building relationships. So I'm hopeful that at least one of you gets something out of today. That was another joke. Okay, all right. I'm just getting started. So I started my current role as president of Ascension Mercy Hospital in November of 23. And for some of you who know Walter Scott, who is unfortunately not able to be here today, I hear he's watching, so Scotty, I just want to say thank you. He's really the reason I'm here today. So he walked up into administration, and I heard him talking to Jenny, my admin, who's here today. Thank you, Jenny. And came into my office and started to share a little bit about himself, his relationship with Mercy or his past experience at Mercy, and was proud that I was chosen to be the new hospital president at Mercy. Had a great conversation with him, and in that he talked a little bit about excellence in leadership, which I, at that point, had no knowledge of the organization. And he asked me to come to the next event, which was last spring. Who was at last spring's event with Steve Jones? Right, Steve Jones. I was in your seat a year ago today, sat there, awesome speech, bought his book and everything right there. Shortly thereafter, I was asked if I could be next year's speaker. And I was like, really? I'm no Steve Jones. So whatever you paid him, you're going to have to pay me a heck of a lot more to do this. But in all seriousness, thank you to Scotty. Tracy, who came and spoke a little bit about this, the entire EIL board for the opportunity to be here today. And a special thanks to Dr. DeWitt, my chief medical officer. He kept prodding me and prodded me along and said, Shane, you need to do this, Shane, you need to do this. So Dave, thank you. I'm here today because of your confidence in me. So if I fail, it's your fault. A little bit about me. Like it said in the introduction, I grew up in Amro, small town Catholic upbringing, typical Midwest family, hardworking, dedicated parents who are here today. It's Mom, Dad, I love you, thank you. Let's try not to cry today. I'm a Christian husband, father of 4. I like all typical Wisconsin activities, like it said, hunting, fishing, camping, golfing, and spend a lot of time with sporting activities, whether it's with clubs, organizations, but coaching is one of my passions as well. In reflecting back on my 15 years of leadership, it takes me back to who influenced me the most. And I would say it's my coach. He was an educator, a principal, and a leader, my coach. This is my grandfather, Ed Goss. His influence on kids, parents, teachers, coaches, and his community defined him as a leader. He didn't do everything perfect. He wasn't perfect. He often talked about all the mistakes that he made, and I know he had regrets. He always had a kids first mentality as an educator. He often put others above himself, sometimes at the detriment of his family and the time spent with us. But I often heard him say this: if you are not doing it for the kids, then why are you doing it? During his final weeks before his death in July 2012, he had so many visitors at his bedside, from former players, students, teachers, to many friends and family. But of all the visitors, one sticks out the most. He was a teammate and a friend of mine, and we stood up in each other's weddings. And he came to my grandfather's bedside, and I'll tell you what they did when I tell you what happened 15 years prior to that. So my friend got himself in a little bit of trouble when we were in high school, and that's the kind of guy he was. And in order to kind of straighten the ship a little bit, my grandfather asked him to come after school and come to his office. And during that meeting, as legend has it, my grandfather offered him a dip of Copenhagen. Now, for the educators in the room, it was the 90s, right? A little bit different. And he grew up, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and he was at the end of his career. So he offered my friend a dip. And let's just say he didn't offer him a spit cup and proceeded to tell him how he probably should behave better next time. Don't know what proceeded from that, but I imagine it wasn't the last time my friend had a dip. But the meeting that he had with my grandfather at his bedside, my friend sat and reminisced with my grandfather and shared his last chew with my grandpa, right? And I will share that at my grandfather's funeral a couple weeks later, when my friend came through the receiving line, that was probably the greatest hug I've ever received. And I could feel the impact that my grandpa had on him as a football player, but as a man, and as a next coach. And so that story sticks out to me in regards to how my grandfather's legacy impacted him. I felt like I was consoling him the entire time we were during that hug. My grandfather was the light for many, and to this day I often hear stories about how he impacted people's lives. Have you ever met someone that just felt that they needed your help, your support, something maybe you could do for them, even if it were small? I truly believe that leadership is service. It's the 3 S's. It's selfless, it's sacrificial, and sometimes it's just simple. You let your light shine so bright that others can find their way out of the darkness, as you can see from the verse in Matthew's on the screen. A raise of hands who anyone has ever heard of the heliotropic effect. Nobody? So the heliotropic effect is the natural tendency of all living systems, including humans, to move towards life-sustaining energy and away from life-depleting forces. I believe in leadership, you have the opportunity to light a path for others, providing guidance, foster a positive and inspiring environment. Often in this service, you get way more out of it than you put in. And this is one of those stories. I'll try to get through this, Mallory. I'm going to tell a little bit of a story about Mallory. Pre-COVID, and those of us in healthcare, there's pre, intra, and post-COVID, right? We all know what we're talking about. So pre-COVID, hiring nurses was a little bit easier than it is today. And so we often didn't hold positions, we often just filled them and we just moved on. Well, there's a particular situation that came to my attention when I was a chief nursing officer, where of an individual that we hired, unfortunately after about a month of finding out, being on the floor, we found out that her license technically was suspended. And the nursing leadership team brought it to me and said, Shane, it's an unfortunate event, but she's really great and we want to keep her on and see if we can fight through this with her. And I said, well, let me meet her. And so they brought Mallory to me and we had a conversation. And I felt at that point this was somebody we probably should invest in. And so Mallory, unfortunately, had a suspended license because of her alcohol and drug addiction. And I won't get into that, but because of that, she wasn't able to practice until that license was freed up almost to the point of a state and national level. So it was going to take some time. So in meeting Mallory, I thought, well, let's see how we can help her through this. And we kept Mallory whole. We offered her a clerical opportunity to help us out in the administrative suite. We kept her nursing wage, her nursing job code. And about 2 months, Mallory was reinstated with a probationary license, which allowed her to then go back onto the floor. And during those 2 months, I got to know Mallory. I got to walk by her every day and interact with her and really use her in a way in which that I would otherwise not use a nurse in those situations. But I got to develop a relationship with Mallory and got to understand who she was. And in every day in those interactions, I knew we made the right decision in keeping Mallory in our organization. This is Mallory and I about 5-6 years after that. I had an opportunity to present Mallory with our organization's Nurse of the Year award that she won and was nominated by her fellow colleagues. The one thing I learned about watching her journey and growth is sometimes we have to sit with people in their pain. Don't tell them, if you need something, let me know. They're not going to let you know. Don't wait for them. Go to them. And then when you get there, just listen. Mallory, thanks for letting me tell that story. I'm going to go off script. Mallory is 8.5 years sober. 8.5 years sober. And to see where she is, both personally and professionally, it's an honor to be your friend and a fellow nurse, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you. Wait, hang on. Yep, all right. So now that story's over with. We're good now. So one of the most difficult things that I find in leadership is to stop talking. And for those of you that know me, I'm still a work in progress. Early in my career, I used to use what was called an A card and a B card. You could probably use the word C for complaint, but you can probably figure out what I meant by B card. But I found myself not listening either way. I was just itching to respond in either scenario. So I started to practice listening not to respond, but to understand, which is still a work in progress for me. How often do many of you wonder why people act or respond the way they do? Whether that's in a work scenario, a personal life scenario, sometimes you're like, "What? I don't understand why that person is either overacting or underreacting." I would say in healthcare, such behaviors lead to dysfunction amongst the team, leading to communication breakdowns, patient safety concerns, and potentially poor outcomes. So it's imperative for us as leaders to understand the why behind such behaviors. The only way to do that is to listen. I'm going to share another story about a doctor. This is going to be good. This doc was new. He was straight out of fellowship. He was a proceduralist. He was a doctor that had a very particular set of skills, such skills that kind of save your life when you need it most. Being new to the organization, new to our hospital, he didn't have the dynamics or the relationships sometimes with the team, so they were still learning how to be together. One day, I was just getting all sorts of feedback of how horrible his behavior was and the way he was treating people. Not only treating people, but in situations where it mattered most, not to treat people that way, right? So opportunities for communication breakdowns and so on and so forth. So I didn't really want to, but I thought I need to pull him in and have this conversation. It wasn't really my job to. I probably could have leveraged the chief medical officer, maybe the hospital president, but I felt now is my time, right, to really establish a relationship with him. So I brought him in the office and I said, Doc, what's going on? He proceeded to tell me everything that was wrong with what the staff was doing, why the equipment doesn't work right, and everything that I needed to fix. And I said, no, Doc, what's going on? He's like, well, I just told you what's going on. I said, no, what's going on? And he's like, he still didn't get it. I said, what's going on with you? Tell me what's going on. Why are you acting this way? Well, that pause that he had, he completely just melted into his chair, and he said, Shane, I don't know how I can do this. You know, I live an hour and a half away from here. My wife is home with 2 kids. She's pregnant with our 3rd. Just last night, my son had an allergic reaction to a medication. I thought he was going to die. I brought him into the ED. Now, here's this well-educated physician. His son was having a simple antibiotic reaction, and he just could not control himself. So his behaviors were exhibited by the stress that he was having, and he could not correlate that to a better opportunity in the procedure room. And so by the time we left that conversation, I just let him know that I was here for him, and I could relate. And I said, well, what antibiotic was it? And when he told me, I said, well, my son had the same reaction, and guess what? He's going to be okay. Your son's going to be okay. Sometimes just being with someone in the moment where they are in that space and just listen, maybe give an example or an opportunity to share a story that you can relate with them. But you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to listen. People want to be heard and not told what to do. Who here as leaders have to do a 90-day review after an employee starts? Can you raise your hand? The interactive part of today's session, right? So HR says, you know, this employee's been with us for 90 days. We want you to sit down with them and check off a bunch of boxes. Well, in my previous organization, that really wasn't working for us because our compliance was about 30%, meaning our leaders were not doing the reviews. And in my world, from a nursing perspective, if it's not documented, it's not done. So although I felt as an executive leader that it probably was getting done, there was no compliance to it. So we started a 30, 60, 90, 120, and 180-day onboarding process. No way, right? Like, how could you get that done? And each step of the way, everybody in an organization had an opportunity to engage with new employees. So at 30 days, it was the educator or the preceptor. At 60, it was a check-in, so on and so forth. And it kind of went all the way up the chain of command. So at 180 days, I met with them. And I was able then to look at all the other reviews prior to that and understand if they truly met and they truly engaged with that new employee from a leadership perspective. I did this for about 8 years. I did it through COVID, It started off as mandatory, meaning my administrative assistant made a calendar invite and followed up and make sure that I met with everybody. And it was not only clinical people, but it was security, farm techs, EVS, food nutrition, everybody that really touched my span of control and beyond. I had an opportunity to meet with them at 6 months. There were some years I think I did 120 in a year, 30 minutes. I think if you do the math, it's maybe like a week of 52 weeks of the year. So in the grand scheme of things, it's really not a lot of time. It just seems like a lot of time. It was a revelation for me a little bit after my wife decided to force me to read a book, which I'm not really good at and I'm getting better at. But she gave me the 5 love languages. Anybody know about Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages, right? Won't go into that very much, but it was very clear that not everybody had a love language of quality time like I did. And so kind of went into making it an opportunity, and the numbers kind of decreased a little bit. But the value that I got out of those interactions really, really impacted me. The one thing that I did learn is the impact of one. Getting to understand what each person needed from their leaders, the organization, their peers, and how they wanted to receive recognition and what empowered them in their personal engagement. So one of the questions I always asked is, how do you want to be more involved in what you need from me to help support you in your personal and professional growth in this organization? It was an amazing journey over a very long period of time. I'm not currently doing that in my new organization, and my team's probably looking at me like, oh boy, here we go. But it was certainly a very impactful leadership response, and we did it to increase engagement and retention. And although our scores increased as a result of that, that's not really where the value came. The value came with the relationships that we built from the unit to the department, to the profession, and then to as a whole hospital. I was going to read off that slide. Can we go back? Thank you. Quote from Gandhi is, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in serving others," which I think is so true. So during these times, I found out a lot about myself as a leader and where I can improve, both personally and how to lead the leaders in my organization. So give it a try. Challenge you, for each new employee that comes into your organization over the next year, pick a mark wherever the mark is most meaningful for your organization. In healthcare, I think that's about 6 months. Typically, orientation into a new position is around 3 months. I think you'll find out a lot about yourself, a lot about your organization, and a lot about your leaders that are leading with you. Leading outward, not inward, has a tendency to lead us to serve, not to pursue our own happiness, but the happiness of those that we serve. We live in a culture that's obsessed with positions, control, power, influence. And yes, will that make you a good leader? Sure, to some extent. But if you don't need any of this, you don't need any of that to truly serve. I often say that it's not the badge that you're wearing, but the person who's wearing the badge, right? When we serve with love, it allows ourselves to be vulnerable. We can have faith and hope. We allow ourselves the ability to assume positive intent. My screen is too small, so I have to jump over here to see the quotes. From 1 Corinthians 13:13, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And more on love in a little bit. I'll tell you a story about, I sound Wisconsin, don't I? Tell you a story about a gentleman that I met by the name of Aaron Sadoff. Does anybody know Aaron in the room? Aaron, when I first found out about Aaron, it was because of my interactions and be involved in school boards and in school districts. I sit on the Armoro School District School Board, and so I heard about Aaron through my opportunities in that profession. And my wife actually did a clinical rotation for school counseling at North Fond du Lac, and she got to get had an opportunity to have some training that the North Fond du Lac School District provided, and that's where she met Aaron. I now am connected with Aaron because of an opportunity that organizations are looking at to grow diagnostic radiology techs and sonographers. But I had an opportunity to sit down with Aaron, who's now the president at Marian University in Fond du Lac. He is an amazing guy. I'd put him on your list, Dawn, of next speakers. Little promo for him. He doesn't know I said that, by the way. He's an amazing guy. He's an amazing leader. And I had the pleasure to sit down with him in his office. I really wanted to know more about his leadership journey and his style. Upon leaving, he shared a book with me. And I'm only pulling it out because the book is called Mindcraft. So for those of you in the room that have little kids, it's not Minecraft, it's Mindcraft. Because when he said it to me, I was like, you wrote the book on Minecraft? Like, why are you the president at the university? You probably should be on a beach somewhere, right? And in that book, he wrote, in chapter 6, he wrote about judge good, assume positive intent. He writes about when assuming positive intent, we create a foundation to be receptive to others, building a culture of openness, engagement, and growth. And faith is one of those characters that leads us. Again, I have to come to the stage because it's too small in there, so I apologize. To be more receptive and allowance for learning, react in a positive, adaptive manner, even in negative situations. We give others the gift of dignity, and others may see us as caring and accepting, and opens doors to more positive relationships. Who's taken the Myers-Briggs test? It's kind of just a standard for us, right? If you haven't figured out, I am a total ENFP. Just take that for what it is. It's probably one of the reasons that I said yes to coming up here, which leads me to value relational versus transactional leadership styles. Now, this may not work for some of you in the room today, but I'd like to share how this has impacted my relationship in and outside of leadership, as well as the failures that it has taught me that I can do better. I'm going to try to get through this one, so this is a tough one too. But in one way or another, I've been involved with 3 nurses. One of them was a really good friend of mine. I'm not going to talk about him today. But have been terminated for drug diversion. For those of you who don't know what drug diversion, that means that somehow, some way, a nurse, a doctor, whoever has access to medications has diverted narcotics and subsequently used that for self-use and not distributed to the patient. So not only have they caused patient harm and delay of care, they basically have broken the law. In 2 of those situations, I was personally involved with the investigation, conversations, discovery. Later on in my career, had an unfortunate opportunity to terminate one of my best friends because of his drug diversion habits. But in the 2 situations, the one that I want to talk about today, I was a hospital supervisor and I got called down by the ED, and they said our counts are off for morphine. I said, why would the counts be off for morphine? And you can tell who takes out the last medication. There was a 10 milligram morphine syringe that was unaccounted for. It didn't get wasted, it didn't get put back, and we really couldn't tell that it was given to a patient. This was back in the transition of Cerner to Epic, so some things were on paper, some things were in the computer. So it just so happened that during those situations, you can often tell who had the last access to it. And it just so happened to be a nurse that, because of their shift ending, was going home in the middle of the day, and this was a weekend. So I called him up and I said, let's just say his name is Bob, and I said, Bob, can you help explain where 10 milligrams of morphine went? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I have it in my pocket. I said, in your pocket? Like, are you home now, or where are you? Yeah, I'm home. I said, you're going to turn around and you're going to bring that morphine back to the hospital. Okay, I'll be right there. I went on with my day, and eventually he paged me back, and I met him down in the ED, and he pulls it out of his pocket, and the glass syringe is completely shattered. It's in two pieces with shards, like it just broke in his pocket. But I didn't feel like it broke in his pocket, and I just kind of looked at him and I said, Bob, that's going to be a problem, right? This is not good. And so I sent him back home, escalated the situation to my superiors, for lack of a better word, and really lost track of Joel for a couple weeks. But it was clear that he was no longer with the organization. Bob, did I say Bob? I said Joel. Is Joel, Bob, Sam? Thanks, Dave. It's Bob. I tried. It doesn't really matter. His wife also worked in the ED, and she's kind of an outspoken lady, but got really quiet. And during those times, it was discovered that she was also having theft of the organization. What she was doing is she was taking urine drug tests to test her husband at home. Now she has lost her job, right? So both people in the organization that come from the same family are now struggling. We did not do a good job of just making that personal, having a relationship, trying to understand the why. It was very transactional, and it bothered me. I was not really in a position where I could make the decision for them to stay or for them to go. And in this situation, as well as the other three nurses, Bob committed suicide 3 months later. That was the second time in my career at that point where a nurse was let go for drug diversion. That was very transactional, just, I'm sorry, you failed, you broke the law, we're going to report you to the State Board of Nursing, you're going to lose your license, but we're not going to deal with your pain or your problem. And now they're no longer with us, right? Those situations happened prior to me meeting Mallory, which was really why I was committed, and we have been committed and are committed as a healthcare organization to those individuals. So it gets me back to being relational versus transactional. In these difficult situations, people are dealing with their demons, and although you can't always be the answer, you can treat these conversations with compassion, a caring attitude, and support for healing, and you can do so with grace. I never want any of you to be in a situation that you look back and you question whether you could have done more. Remember, there is always more we can do. So in these moments, the more that people tell you that they don't care, they do care. Just be with them in that space. So on to a much happier example of relational versus transactional leadership that has nothing to do with healthcare. I want to talk a little bit about the barbershop. Can I get a time check? I have no context to where I'm at today. What time is it? Half an hour? Oh, we're speeding along pretty good then. Okay. This might sound a little like off topic and a little like where are you going, but hopefully I'll bring this one back. So a few weeks ago, I was down in Chicago for a work function, and a few colleagues and I went out to extremely expensive steakhouse that I had no business being in. But my doctor friend was like, let's go, and I was like, all right, you're buying. And we get there, there's no reservations. And he's like, oh, we're just going to stand at the bar and wait for somebody to stand up. And I was like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. And if you've ever been in a Chicago steakhouse, it's dark, like you don't even know where you're at. Uber took you there and you're completely lost. You don't know which way is north, south, east, or west. And as we're sitting there talking, there's three of us. I got the short end of the straw on the corner next to an older gentleman and a younger gentleman. The younger gentleman clearly was from Italy. He had a very strong Italian accent. And the older gentleman sitting next to me was an American. And as we finally got a seat next to them, because we were kind of just hovering behind, and I sat down, and the conversation kind of turned to the other two kind of leaving me out, which I'm fine being on my own, so it wasn't like I was trying to lean in. But the way in which it happened is David, who ended up being the older gentleman next to me, he kind of looked over and we started having a conversation. Now, David's from New York, but he comes to Chicago frequency because he's in the clothing industry, men's high-end Italian clothing. Clearly something I know a lot about, so we had a lot to talk about. Don't know how much this suit costs, but this was like $39.99 from Target, so yeah, he pegged me right away, right, trying to sell me suits. David and I spent, and his colleague, we spent the entire dinner together talking. I never even talked to the people that I came with. And I got to know a lot about David, about his life, about his work, his passion, who he was, and it just came natural, right? And sometimes that happens. I get on an airplane, and next thing you know, I'm going to a wedding with somebody, right? So that's just kind of who I am. But David and I had a great conversation, and one of the stories that he told me was about his barber, who actually was a hairstylist. She was a female, and he had been going to the same barber for 20 years in New York. So you can imagine over those 20 years how much more expensive his haircut got. And for those of us in the room that have less hair than I do, let's just say it that way, his haircut was pretty simple, right? More of a buzz cut. His haircut today costs $200 in New York for the person that he goes to. Now, he could probably find somebody cheaper to go get a haircut from, maybe his wife in the bathroom, right, just buzzing it. But he said to me, he said, well, Shane, I don't go to her for the haircut, right? I go to her because it's her, right? I know her kids, I know her story, and it's just a place for me to go and to relate and to connect. And often, I imagine he doesn't need his haircut that often, but he is committed to her and that haircut. So David bought me one more bourbon, and then he was out, and he said he was going to call me, and he has not called me yet because apparently he still wants to sell me something. But it reminds me of my own relationship with my barber or barbers. So it doesn't look like it, but I had a shaved head for most of my high school, most of my college, and even into my adult years. And my mom was my hairstylist, for lack of better words, right? My mom cut my hair probably till I was in my mid-30s, maybe even late 30s. So going to a barber, to me, was not an experience that I had had in my childhood or in my young adult life. But clearly had a relationship with my barber. And so when I went to a barber, it took me a little bit until I met a guy named Barber Rich. Anybody know who Barber Rich is? A few folks in the room. Rich wasn't able to make it today, but Rich started a story about Rich is he started his barber shop in Oshkosh after 15 years of being in prison. Won't get into how he got into prison, but he spent most of his young adult life into his 30s in prison. That's where he learned how to be a barber, and he got licensed. And I didn't know any of this prior to walking into Rich's shop. But he ended up opening up a shop in Omro, where him and his wife started a business together after she got done with cosmetology school. And I just didn't like where I was going. Mom's like, I'm done cutting your hair. It's too fancy. You look too good. If you're going to shave it, maybe she'd still do it. But so I needed to find another place to do my hair. Sounds so simple, but I walked into Rich's shop, and he greeted me with a hug and no special. If you know Rich, he greets everybody with a hug. You are his brother to the end. But Rich and I connected on a passion of ours, and that was hunting. Rich was just getting into hunting. I had been hunting for many, many years, and I felt a special connection to him. And over the last probably 5-6 years, he has moved around a little bit, and he's out in Watoma, and he's kind of cutting hair anywhere and everywhere. He's soon to move to Florida, so I won't get a chance to engage with him. But I don't go to get my hair cut by Barber Rich. I go because it's him, and I'm committed to him, and I love interacting with him. I love building rapport with him, and I get to learn something from him every single time I come, because we really came from two different worlds, right? And so this seemingly weird, random story brings me back to when you practice building relationships when nothing is at stake, right? It's just a haircut, right? It makes it easier when they matter most. It drives purpose towards connecting with others and brings joy to the workplace when you use those skills. Transactional style, although might have its advantages from an efficiency, motivation, clarity perspective, and it might work in some settings like the military, manufacturing, or in some sports. Relational leadership emphasizes building strong interpersonal connections to foster trust, collaboration, and a positive work environment. I'm going to read a quote from Bob Goff. You can love people without leading them, but you cannot lead them without loving them. It took me a while to understand that, and to truly love what you do means to love who you do it with. And if that's not where you're at, I challenge you to maybe change where you're at. Love always allows you to lead from your head to your heart. So in my meeting with Aaron Sadoff, we talked a lot about servant leadership. He said he doesn't like the word leadership. He's like, I like to use the word serviceship. Well, when you Google or you type serviceship, you get nothing, right? But it's a great word. I want to talk about another chance encounter that I had over the last couple of months. And I think it's God's plan for some reason. When I was asked to do this speech or give this opportunity, these people just started coming into my life. And this is another special one. I met a guy named Chris. Chris is the CEO of Hematech. It's a dialysis company that does acute care dialysis in the state of Michigan. So you ask, well, how did you find a guy from Michigan? Well, this is Chris's story and how I met Chris. So I was meeting with our contracting people, and we were talking about dialysis services, and they asked me if I would sit in on an RFP presentation for a couple companies that we're going to bring in at the state level. Well, being a clinical nurse by background and nursing world for a long time, that's really not my responsibility anymore, although I still lead nurses. I thought I could give some really, really great insight to who our next relationship should be with. And so went down to corporate headquarters down in Glendale and sit around this huge boardroom, and it's ridiculous how big this boardroom that we have down there is, but you can get about 50 people around it. And so I'm way across the one end, and the Hematech team is all, probably 4 or 5 of them, are all at the other end of the table. And Chris started his presentation. He's the CEO. I'll share a little background. It's his dad's company. His dad started this company because his dad was a dialysis nurse and felt like he himself could provide a better service to patients and hospitals if he started this on his own. So many, many years ago, he started the company, sold the company, bought the company back, retired and said, son, Chris, you're taking this over. Chris was a paramedic. Chris didn't know anything about dialysis, but he was in the healthcare. And he said, all right, Dad, I'll lead the best that I can. And that's how Chris ended up with the reins at Hematech. It's a family company. His brother-in-law was the lawyer that was at the table next to him. And people that were involved in the organization had somehow a connection to the family. Chris and his team, they didn't bring anybody from the sales team. In fact, they don't have anybody on their sales team. He didn't pitch an ROI. He didn't tell us how much money he was going to save us. And so as this presentation is coming along, I'm like, this feels different. Something's different about him. Something's different about the organization. And that certainly is not what we often experience in healthcare and clinical contracts. It's all about, the money, how much we're going to save. We're going to talk about our performance and how great we are, and here's your outcomes. And all those things came eventually, but that's not how he started the conversation. I could tell there were other leaders in the room that were maybe a little bit like, about this presentation. But for me, I was like, this seems like somebody I'd like to work with, right? And commit this type of partnership to. He talked about his people. He talked about how as a leadership team, they invest and commit to them. It was powerful. I mean, he showed us slides in an RFP about engagement and how they give back, and just completely a different presentation. So I left that meeting, said thanks, and did the normal corporate goodbyes. And it's Midwest, so it takes us about 30 minutes to get out of the room. But a few weeks later, I had Chris's business card in my hand, and I just felt I needed to talk to Chris. I wanted to know more about his journey, more about his experience, and more how maybe he could help me learn in my leadership growth, and maybe a little bit of our team. At this point, they did not win the contract, and so I was kind of going rogue. I didn't really know if this was going to be appropriate. But I called Chris, and I said, Chris, would you be willing to just sit down with me for an hour and just chit-chat? I'll meet you wherever you want to meet you. He's like, absolutely, Shane, I'll come to your office. I said, from Detroit? He's like, yeah, it'll give me a reason to go to Chicago, visit some family, and I'll just jet up. I'm like, it's 3 hours from Chicago to jet up. It's not Milwaukee. It's another hour and a half north. No problem. I'll be there. Jenny, I think we scheduled an hour. An hour. We scheduled an hour for him to come on a random Wednesday afternoon to Wisconsin from Detroit. Chris and I proceeded to have 3 hours together. It didn't feel like 3 hours. By the end, I gave him a tour. I was excited about his journey, his experience. And he taught me a little bit about servant's leadership because he is the epitome of servant leadership. I feel like I'm giving you a library here, but another book he shared with me was called The Go-Giver. I have it. Is it The Go-Giver or Go-Giver? It's The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver. I'm not promoting my own book. I'm promoting everybody else's book. In this book, it refers to the 5 laws of stratospheric success. And it's a great read. And again, I'm not a big reader, but I was able to get through that during spring break. So it took me 7 days, but I got through it. It talks about these laws of stratospheric success. And the 4th law is the law of authenticity. Authenticity, thank you. It quotes by saying, "People, remember this, no matter what your training, no matter what your skills, no matter what your profession that you're in, you are your most important commodity." The law of authenticity goes on to say, reaching any goal you set takes 10% specific knowledge or skill, 10% max. The other 90+%, this gets a little glitchy, so don't ignore the screen. The other 90+% is people skills. What's the foundation of all people skills? Liking people kind of helps, right? Caring about people, that's a good start. Being a good listener, definitely. Those are all helpful, but they're not the core of it. The core of it is who you are, and it starts with you. So I ask, who are you? There's another book I'd like to share with you. It's called Convince Them in 90 Seconds or Less by Nick Boothman. Who's read that? It's a little tiny little book. Anybody see that book? Go grab it. It's a great one to have on your shelf because you can kind of just flip with some little nuggets. And one of those nuggets, funny that I say nugget, right? Did not plan that. That just slipped right out, I swear to God. I'm going to get distracted here. You see Colonel Sanders? See him? Right? No, you're going to never look at that picture ever the same. My son goes to me, "Dad, why does he have such little arms and legs?" It's all you're going to see. It's all you're going to see. I can't unsee it. I tried to get rid of it. It won't even go off the screen. So to bring us back, in that book is a little nugget or finger about KFC. KFC stands for know what you want, find out what you're getting, and change what you do until you get what you want. So I often have to say that to myself, KFC, KFC, KFC. If you say it out loud, people think you're just hungry, right? We don't have one in Oshkosh, by the way, anymore, do we? No? But as a leader, know what kind of leader you want to be. Find out who you are right now as a leader. And if it's not who you want to be, change your mindset. So as we wrap up our time together, I'm hopeful that you took away something useful. My belief in true servant leadership is knowing what kind of leader you want to be. Be authentic, understanding that you are your best asset. Lead through love, be relational and not transactional. Assume good intent and have faith in others. Understand the impact of one. Listen, share, and lead. And leadership is service. It is selfless, it is sacrificial, but remember, KISS. Any golf fans in the room today? Does anybody know? We got two guys in the back that play golf. You're all lying. You're all lying. I know how many outings I do a year. I can only imagine what this group's outing content is. But does anybody know what Tiger Woods' dad used to talk to him about when he said KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. Right? Keep it simple. Be the light. Never forget where you came from. It will continue to serve you and where you want to go. So in closing, which hopefully I'm not too far ahead of schedule, we're doing good. All right, so in closing, I want to share one last story with you. After COVID was tough, right guys? COVID was horrible for all of us. And don't even like to use that same word, but I struggled particularly with COVID, both personally and professionally. In healthcare, there was a lot on us to be right, to be perfect, especially in unknown circumstances or uncertainty. I remember leading incident command for 2 weeks because my boss was stuck in Bangladesh doing missionary work and couldn't get back. So the responsibility was on me. As we navigated through COVID, there was the mandatory masks, there was the mandatory vaccines, there was a lot of tough things put on us as healthcare providers. A lot that the general public had no knowledge what we were dealing with. And that's not really what this story is about, but the story for me personally was, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if I want to be in healthcare. I don't know if I want to be a nurse, but I certainly don't know if I want to lead this way anymore in healthcare. My biggest struggle was I just had different faith beliefs. I had different values than I felt where we were going. So with that, I was building a plan to get the heck out, right? That plan took a little while. My plan was real estate. For the realtors in the room, you're like, why would you do that? Or yay. But I really wanted an opportunity to get out, and I thought real estate might be that right path. Primarily because I wanted to sell hunting and rural farm properties. And as I met with realtor organizations before I took all the classes and the test, I met with a few realtors, and they were all like, no, Shane, that's not how it works. Like, you don't just get to pick what you want to sell, and that's what you're going to do. It's not going to work for us. And so I was a little dejected, and so I kind of delayed my path. At the same time, I'm leading on healthcare. And so from 21 to about 23, I went on this journey of what do I want to do? I was applying in healthcare at other organizations, and for about a year, I gave up and just said, look, I'm content where I'm at. I'm going to go the realtor path, and I'm going to figure out how I can get there, go from A to B. So went online, took the courses, did all the class content, all the CEUs and everything, went to the University of Oshkosh, took the state license, and I passed my real estate exam. And after I passed my real estate exam, I'm like, all right, where do I go from here? Because you can't just sell real estate in the state of Wisconsin without being underneath a broker for the first 2 years, and you have to have a certain amount of sales. So I needed somebody to work for. So I sent a couple emails out to these rural farm hunting real estate firms, and there's all sorts a bunch of them out in the state of Wisconsin. And I got one call back. And it was Weiss Realty out in the south, out in the west side of the state. They sell in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And my wife and I drove up to Stevens Point, and we met with the broker owners of Weiss Realty. And similar to other stories that I've shared with you, it was an immediate connection. These guys were my people, right? They were hunters, they were outdoorsmen. I was exactly what they were looking for. And when I left the meeting, I felt like I had an in, like these guys are going to let me sign, right? And before I left, I said, well, I just want to let you know there's maybe one possible next step for me in healthcare, and that's if I get the next opportunity to be a hospital president, because that's kind of where I wanted to land. But I didn't know where that was going to be. I didn't currently have anything in queue that I was interviewing for, but I just said over the next 6 months, as we maybe develop this plan together, I said there might be an opportunity for me to maybe not do this if I get that next shot. Well, I signed on the dotted line with them in July of 2023. And my wife and I were planning our exit strategy on how we were going to financially afford that, transitioning my career. She had finished being a school counselor. I'm like, looks like I'm going to have to get a full-time job now. She's a little concerned about that, but we were working on that. But at that point, I was done. Like, I was really, really, really done. And I'm like, I don't care if I have to sell stuff, right? And we have to change our life to do something that is meaningful, because I wanted to find purpose in what I was doing. I wanted to serve others differently, maybe not from a leadership perspective, but to give back in some way, and really maybe step away from leadership. So that was July of 2023. It was a random golf outing with my brother-in-law, and he said, Shane, did you see that Ascension Mercy's going to hire a hospital president? I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no clue, and so I looked online, and sure enough, they had a position posted. So I called up a few people in the organization that I knew, and I said, what are you doing? They're like, well, we're restructuring. We're going to put new presidents in all the hospitals. And I said, well, what better opportunity for me to stay in the community that I serve and I love to come over there? And so I think it was August timeframe, I started applying, interviewing, and was fortunate to get the opportunity to come over to Ascension in November. That opportunity has re-energized me. I'm finding purpose in our ministry, and we call it our ministry, being a Catholic, faith-based organization. We don't call it a market. We don't call it a department. We call it our ministry. I've been able to re-engage with my community in which I live and I love. I have a better relationship with Christ, my family, and the people that I serve and the people that I lead. I'm renewed, refreshed. So if you hear anything from me today, find your place, find your people, find your purpose. I am right now where God intends me to be. I just want to say thank you to my Mercy team. There's 3 tables of you here today. I love you. I love serving you. I love what we do. And yeah, I'm having fun every single day, even though lately you haven't seen a lot of me, but I just want to say thank you and I appreciate you. So can I get a hand for my Mercy team, please? So earlier I talked about my grandfather, my coach. When I was younger, I wanted to take his lead and serve others through athletics and through coaching. And to some extent, I'm doing that. But what defines me as a leader is my nursing roots. If I didn't mention before, my healthcare and leadership journey started at the bedside as a critical care nurse. And in some divine way, my path has led me to follow another special person in my life. And that's my grandma. My coach's wife, Catherine Goss, my nurse. Thank you for all being here today. I'm grateful for this opportunity, and may God bless you all.
So good. Shane, thank you so much. I really appreciated your stories and just that idea of seeing leadership as an opportunity to relate and connect to others. It reminded me of a mentor who once said to me, Jenny, if you want to lead people, you have to learn to love them. And I think sometimes in the busyness of all we're responsible for, I think we sometimes need to be reminded to slow down to see people. So Shane, thank you again for encouraging us and pouring into us today. So good. Will you guys give him a hand one more time? All right, well, we are wrapping up for today. I want to encourage you, if you didn't fill out the survey just to give us some feedback, please do that before you leave. You can either fill out the card on your table or scan that QR code and just give us a little feedback. That's so helpful. Mark your calendars for October 14th to join us with Stephanie Hauser. We are looking forward to that event and want to be sure that you are here with us for that. And then finally, the book giveaway goes to the person at your table who has a birthday closest to Shane's birthday. Shane's birthday is June 19th. So whomever at your table has a birthday closest to June 19th can take the book with you. Be sure to say hello to some friends and have an amazing day, you guys. Thank you.